All right, y'all, welcome to the show. Let's, I guess, go ahead and try this again. This is episode 198 for the Four Verticals podcast. High top, once again, a hazy, hot Jacksonville, Florida. Like I mentioned on the other stream we were doing, which was a mistake. I actually chose the wrong thing we did. For some reason, to read the software we're using, Restream, apparently, I guess when you log back in, it goes to the one that you were doing the day before, so it just kind of re-registers. Very strange, but anyway, got that situated and whatnot. We got that fixed, so that's all good. So anyway, yeah, this is episode 198, 2 episodes away from episode 200. Pretty incredible. Been doing this for the past 2 years now, I believe, and already up to 200 episodes. So got a loaded show for you guys today. A lot of things to discuss. We'll talk about this whole SEC propaganda crisis going on. A lot of folks freaking out about it. Yours truly has been having some fun on making interesting edits. So I'll show you one of those. You haven't seen it yet as we talk about that. We also have a topic that I wanted to discuss a little bit. Just some teams I'm excited to watch this season, teams I am fascinated to watch. So we'll dive into that. Then we'll do the wrap up with the team record projection series with the Washington Huskies. Okay. So for those of you who are new here, we do this show twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays around this time in the afternoon on the East Coast. We'll see what happens going forward if we change some stuff for the time or anything, which probably doesn't change much for you guys. Whether more likely if you watch, especially if you're watching a replay, doesn't really matter. For the most part, of course, when the season, as we're kind of getting closer to it, reminder, we will be going live as soon as the games are over. Or maybe not live, but after the games on Saturday have concluded, the plan is tentatively to do what we did last year and do a recap of the past games over the weekend, right? So we'll be doing our recap. Those will be either pre-recorded or those will be live on YouTube on the channel. Okay, so those will not be on Spotify or anything like that. Those will be exclusive to the YouTube channel. And of course, we have our extra pod. We do that once a week. We'll do one tomorrow. That will be, of course, the full one on Spotify. You'll get some of the clips on YouTube, little previews and stuff like that. So be sure to subscribe to Spotify for that. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. If you have anyone like friends, family members who are also football fans, be sure to subscribe or have them subscribe to the channel as well. And be sure to follow us on the socials, X, Twitter, the links over there, Instagram as well. I mean, look, I know a lot of folks that watch this show that are still, we're still trying to grow this out, but it does help, especially now that the season's getting back. We're getting back in the swing of things, and during the season, that's really helped us out. So be sure to, again, like the streams, we do them, subscribe to the channel, podcast feed, and all of that. And that's all we ask here. Again, we don't put this shit behind a paywall. That's not our style. That's, not the way we do things over here. So everything that you get here, all free of charge. There is no, don't pay me anything. Don't have to give me any money. This isn't behind a Patreon or anything like that. This is all, again, we're also independent media. Never talked to an advertiser before. Unless it's one that I do trust, we'll partner with them. But for the most part, that ain't going to be the case. So just put it out there. So be sure to, subscribe to the channel, all that good stuff. And that's all we ask. So I'm going to go ahead and get this set up here. So over the last couple, 24 hours or so, since this situation has started, you may have seen a clip going on or floating around from Penn McAfee show. This may be from yesterday or Tuesday, that featured Laura Rutledge, who is no longer doing college football. I think she's transitioned to NFL now, so she'll be doing a lot more of like Monday Night Football, stuff like that. I don't think she's doing like the SEC Nation and whatnot. So she was on Penn McAfee, and they were talking about NFL stuff and also college football. And what I wanted to show you guys is one of the clips, or at least, actually, I don't think I should actually play the clip that is from the Penn McAfee show, so I don't want to get copyright. But what I'm going to do is share my screen and play sort of what I ended up, putting out there earlier, little edit I made. Here it is. So if you haven't seen this yet, hopefully I don't get copyright here. That'll be really, really bad. But I don't think I'm going to. But I'll just play some of it. I get, but I'm not going to play the entire thing because again, I don't want to really get in trouble. But if you have been on the X or any of or on X at all, then you haven't seen this yet. But I'll go ahead and just play it here. So here's what I made a little edit here, and again, this is kind of a little funny thing I did earlier. Then I'll explain sort of what's actually happening here and what has sort of created the whole entire firestorm that's been going on here. So let me go ahead and play this for you guys real quick. Now for Spotify, I guess I could turn the volume up, I guess. Well, it actually is up, so you guys can maybe hear it a little bit for Spotify. But, of course, on YouTube, you'll be able to hear it. So on Spotify, if you don't hear anything, if you hear it maybe failing in the background, then it kind of is what it is. So let's go ahead and try this out. So go ahead and hit play here, and we'll let this play itself out. It's not too long. It's actually longer than the actual video. It's only 52 seconds, so we should be okay, hopefully, with copyright. But anyway.
Fine, except I wanted to point out just a couple of things. So I think one of the reasons why the SEC maybe has not advanced as far as the playoff as some SEC fans would like to see is because the competition within the league is so difficult that 9 games of craziness week in and week out, a little different than other parts, other conferences. I'm not dissing on the Big Ten.
They cannibalize each other.
Right. And so by the time they get to the end, there's not many left. For one, they eliminate each other, but furthermore, they're gassed, they're injured, they have issues. I'm not making excuses, I'm just pointing out facts because you were pointing out facts. And then
we're all gassed. I don't even know if you can't get gassed.
Okay, but the other thing I would like to point out is look at the NFL draft and how many players come out of the SEC, and that's how
good individual players.
Yeah, that's crazy. You guys can't win like that with all the talent. I mean, now you start wondering.
I got a lot of faith in Kirby Smart as well. Fine, except I wanted to point out just a couple of things. So I think one of the reasons.
Okay, so like I mentioned, this clip was surfacing. Not this clip in general. This was something I did myself. But this clip where how I made this edit, why not? The original clip was again surfacing from Pat McAfee show. If you want to see the actual clip here, I can show it to you guys. Actually, I could probably put the link to it on Twitter, actually in the live chat. Let me actually go ahead and do that real quick. Yeah, hold on just a second here. Let me get to my the channel so I can have access to the chat here. I probably should be doing that anyway. But all right, so let me go ahead and put this in the chat for you guys so you guys can actually watch the entire video because that was only 52 seconds of it. So maybe that'll work. Yeah, I guess so. So yeah, hopefully they won't get copyright for that. But anyway, so yeah, so that's kind of what happened there with the clip there on X. If you haven't seen it, pretty funny there. I was doing that. I actually made that last night as soon as I saw that, and I posted it this morning. So yeah, a little putting some interesting music there, some music choice there, kind of fitting the mood of it being the course SEC propaganda machine. So what's actually happening here, and sort of all jokes aside, the SEC propaganda machine is way off control. Like there's no doubt. And I think that video I showed you, that edit, really is kind of what a lot of folks view it. It's state propaganda for the SEC. That's what ESPN and the SEC network are. But what Rutledge actually said here, and I'll bring up what Bud Elliott said. Let me actually go back to sharing the screen here so you guys can actually read what Bud said, because I think his way of putting it, I actually fully agree with, because it's kind of interesting take on it. So I'll go ahead and pull his up real quick here, and this guys can see it and read it along, and I'll read it to you guys on Spotify for those of you who can't see it. So let me go back here. All right, so this is what Bud said about what Lord Rutledge said. So Bud said, quote, "If McAfee has found a way to broadcast from the future, we have to adapt fast or hang it up as a show." That's sarcasm. But anyway, he says this, which is interesting. So are we retroactively using the 9-game conference schedule that hasn't been played yet and an excuse? They played 8 last year, not 9, in a weak SEC. So that's what Bud Elliott said, and I totally, in a lot of ways, agree with him. And I agree with him because, I mean, look, again, like you mentioned, the SEC has not gone to a nine-conference season, a nine-game conference season yet. They're doing that this year. They have done it the last few years. So what Laura Rutledge said in that video that's been floating out there from Pat McAfee's show is, in fact, wrong. It's wrong, okay? And you're supposedly a reporter, so that's a fact error. And that's something that I learned from my time in my undergrad, from whether you're doing stuff in the AP style and whatnot, which is what most reporters use and whatnot. If you said that, if Laura Rutledge did that in an actual newspaper or whatnot, she would probably be called into her editor's office and probably get chewed out. Okay, that is a complete fact error. That is wrong. And look, I respect her. I totally respect Pat McAfee. But everything they said in that whole interview, wrong. Not to mention, I also agree with Bud. The SEC, while yes, it is more or less deep, but in some ways it's still weak because a lot of the teams outside of like the topper-ish tier teams, I guess, like your Georgias, your Texas, a lot of it's, especially last year was kind of within that second layer was mostly slop, right? You had Bama, got blown out by Indiana. You had Tennessee, had a, sweet and sour year. You have teams like Auburn and whatnot. And, Bama struggled with Auburn last year. And you had Georgia struggled with Auburn last year. So, again, just getting simple things like that wrong, doing this whole propaganda thing, acting like, someone else put it out on Twitter earlier. It's like, man, ESPN and SEC Network, they're, in mid-season form already bringing up the strength of schedule. And, we're the best in the conference and no one, the best in the country. No one's going to stop us. Again, it's just more propaganda slop. A lot of it's lies. Not to mention they can't make their facts straight on how many games they played last year. No, Laura, no, Pat. They played 8 games before this year, okay? They have not done the 9-game schedule yet. And not to mention, too, like I mentioned in my little edit, all the, Laura saying, oh, I'm not trying to make excuses. You are making excuses. You are. No doubt in my mind, you are making excuses. Don't lie to us and say, oh, well, there are ones getting hurt. They're all beat up. These are not excuses. It's just, complete facts and the truth. It's not the facts and the truth. You're lying. You're lying. You're bull-faced lying to everyone and to audience on your little state TV media over there, which is known as ESPN, okay? And a lot of folks who aren't, who are kind of confused by this are thinking, man, you're really angry about this. Well, yeah, I am. And a lot of folks don't get it. That is state media for the SEC. Why? They own the playoff. They own the conference, okay? So all, if you haven't noticed over the last 2 years, and look, you can't blame them if you're Disney and ABC and ESPN. Yeah, of course, you'd want the quote unquote best conference in the country to all of your major networks. Of course you would. But to say that these people aren't SEC propaganda, to say they are not, shutting away the ACC or the Big 12 or the Pac-12 or the G5, you're lying to yourself. They are doing that. It's state propaganda. I guarantee you if they were to say otherwise, right? I'm sure Craig Sankey and them are going to be like, don't be saying that in front of him because he'll imagine the stuff he'll do to you. So, yeah, everything they said that little video there that's been floating around is indeed state propaganda. And look, Fox and CBS are guilty of it too. They are guilty of it as well. When it's blatantly obvious, and what makes it even worse, and I'll give CBS, Fox, and NBC some credit here. Well, they're biased too, and they're also, state propaganda for the Big Ten. The thing that they don't have, the thing that the leverage they do not have, and why folks aren't so harsh on them more of the time they are with ESPN, is that ESPN owns the playoff. That's the difference. Now, if Fox owns the playoff, then the criticism be just like with ESPN, harsher towards them, right? But that's the thing. They don't own the playoff. Fox doesn't own, or they don't have the rights to broadcast the playoff. They don't air a playoff game. CBS doesn't air a playoff game. NBC doesn't air a playoff game. Even like some of the associated networks with even the associated networks under CBS and Warner Brothers or whoever they're owned by now. Well, yes, TNT technically does air the playoff games, but it's still technically ESPN and ABC. They're just using their airways. They bought a slot there. They're not using, CBS or TNT packages and whatnot. So, yes, of course, this is state propaganda, and I think that video is very fitting. It's just like how, the United States has state propaganda. The Soviet Union had state propaganda. China has state propaganda, right? Exact same thing, of course, but it just gets so funny and ridiculous when even the esteemed quote unquote journalists out there with ESPN, even they, yeah, sure, they did the whole propaganda thing. They prop up the conference, even though, as Bud mentioned on his tweet yesterday, the SEC, in terms of the mid-level especially, was very, very much so slop. Even some of the esteemed people who I still respect, like Pat McAfee and Laura Relich, even they got a major fact wrong. They just assumed, oh, well, the SEC played 9 games last year. No, they didn't. They haven't done it yet. That's this year. You idiots. You haven't done that yet, okay? Are you guys, mentally, are you not there or something? Or are you guys just, totally brainwashed? It's the fact that, you're still thinking, or you think that the SEC has played 9 games. You want to know the conference has played 9+ conference games already for the past 15 years? Big Ten. They have, right? And also Laura saying, oh, this isn't throwing shade to the Big Ten. Of course you are. Of course you're throwing shade to them. No one's an idiot. No one's stupid. Of course we know what you're saying. It's obvious what you're saying. Again, like I said, I'm not saying the Big Ten has their own propaganda thing they do. But again, to leverage ESPN, the company that you and Pat McAfee work for, they have extra leverage, and they air the playoff games. CBS, Fox, NBC do not. Okay? And I'm getting sick and tired of this whole thing, and this has been happening for multiple years. Go back to the snub of Florida State. It's actually a thing. Greg Sankey's on the propaganda saying, oh, one of these things ain't like the other, right? It's just so annoying, and these people will lie to you, and they'll go and defend themselves on Twitter saying, oh, we're not. This isn't the same propaganda. How dare you say that to us? It is. It is. You own the playoff. You own the SEC. Of course it is. It's so obvious that you guys are, compromised and cheerleading the SEC, even though, fun fact, the Big Ten has won multiple national titles, 3, count them, 3 in a row since 2022. And your precious SEC hasn't done very much to, lift off, to do anything about it recently. They have not. Now, I'll also say that the SEC, if you want to go again from 2000 all the way to now, who's a better conference? Well, yes, the SEC, they have way more championships in that time span. But from 2020 onward, I can't say it's the SEC. It's got to be the Big Ten, and that's just a reality. And these folks, like Penn McAfee, Roy Lutledge, even Josh Payton to a certain extent, even of course Paul Feinbaum too, they can't admit it. They cannot admit it. They won't admit it. Why? Because again, they're associated or work for actually ESPN and the state propaganda. They cannot admit it, but we can admit it. And independent folks can admit it. So again, these people are lying to you and pulling the wool over your eyes and saying that, man, the SEC is so tough and tumble, and they can do so well because they have to play 9 conference games, which again, that's a fact here. That's not true. And also, the SEC has been so good. Well, if they're so good, how come they not win the national title? Why? Explain to me why. Anyway, I'm gonna get it just really that's pissing me off. The propaganda machine, even though it's really obvious, it just it really does frustrate me, and it's frustrated a lot of our folks, and I sympathize with that, right? It really is annoying, and it's something that I know is just it just really is fascinating how they've really they really are, even right now they're in their midseason form and getting you prepared for when that playoff selection stupid show they do comes around. Even before that, they know the war drums will be beating. That's for sure. And it'll be getting louder and louder and louder and louder. You'll be seeing people like Paul Feinbaum on CNN and things like that, or you have Stephen A. doing the same thing, touting the SEC and whatnot, and just shutting out the Big Ten, even though they just won the last 3 national titles and whatnot. It's just so it's getting to the point where it's beyond annoying. And it's even not even the ESPN folks. There's even some local, folks across the Southeast are like that too, where it's chest pumping for the SEC and whatnot. And again, I get it. You gotta have some sort of, conference pride and whatnot. But it's just the fact that these folks won't even acknowledge reality. It's just stupid. And then I just think that a lot of folks just don't understand it, and don't understand why we're mad about it. Not to mention, again, her and Penn McAfee getting a simple fact wrong. Really, man, I get that folks make mistakes, but again, you consider yourself a journalist. It's like, that's a fact there. That'd be something that, again, your editor, if that was for an article or a newspaper, would probably drag you into his office and berate you. Trust me, I've had professors tell me those stories multiple times. So don't. So to kind of wrap this up, it's getting out of control. This has to stop. You got to tone down the rhetoric, and even on the certain extent, the Big Ten folks will I'm sure the blowback will be, well, they have to turn on the rhetoric too. That's fair, but and it's just getting really out of control, and it's just getting them done and going. And it's just so obvious, dude. I'm not even hiding it either. Again, you have people saying, "Oh, we're not trying to diss the Big Ten and whatnot." Well, it's very clear they are, and it's they're not even hiding it, or they're trying to hide it, but they're not doing a good job of it. They're doing a very sloppy job of it. So, yeah, again, I respect Penn McAfee, I respect Laura Lutledge, but I just that clip floating around. It'd be interesting to see what other folks will say about it. People whose initials are JP will, say about it, even though he's been away for a month or so, which is odd. I don't care what his excuse is. Oh, our staff wanted some time off. Well, that wasn't the case a couple of years ago. But anyway, some that's a little sarcasm there. I get it. That gotta do what you gotta do sometimes. But still, I'll be interested to see what other folks are saying about that. And look, if anyone wants to say, "Oh, you're taking this a little bit extreme too," the acting like you're putting a certain music from a certain country or a certain country that doesn't exist anymore behind a video, and you should apologize for that. It's just an edit. It's not like I'm calling these people evil or anything like that. They're just wrong. I'm calling them out for it. I'm calling them out for the propaganda, which is blatant, by the way. Again, I just don't understand why a lot of folks are choosing to ignore that. But anyway, we'll move on here. We'll go to move on to some more happier topics, if you will. But I just need to get that off my chest because it really bothered me last gen. It bothered a lot of people too. It wasn't just me. Again, a lot of folks who have been really, really grilling Penn McAfee and Laura Rutledge yesterday for that little stunt they pulled off there. So it'll be interesting to see what other folks will say about it. But I guarantee a lot of folks from that four-letter network aren't going to address it at all, and then they should, right? They, got to defend yourself, got to defend the SEC, the precious SEC. Got to protect them and not piss off Greg Sankey too. So God forbid you do that, right? At that point, I mean, hell, if you ever piss off Greg Sankey, you may as well be. They'll probably see you to Gitmo, probably, right? Yeah. Anyway, where were we? So let's go ahead and pull up this graphic here, and then we'll continue off the show. That's actually not what I wanted. That's the actual thumbnail for the show. Did I not? Did I seriously not actually download this image? Really? Wow, I guess I did not. How about that? Actually, while I'm doing that, I'm going to go ahead and get some water real quick, and then we'll continue off the show. Okay. Actually, let's go ahead and try this. Try it again. Might be an issue with the image here. It's trying to load, but I don't think it's going to work. Maybe it's going to work now, maybe. All right, good. Okay, so teams I am excited to watch this season. As of course we get closer to the season starting up. Of course, we have fall camps opening up soon. In fact, actually, here in Jacksonville, where I'm at, not too far away from. Oh, actually, I'm not too far away from where Florida State will be at because they'll be coming to Jacksonville next week, I believe, later next week. So who knows? Maybe I'll get some footage or not, and of their practice. They'll be practicing at a little field that's not far from my apartment. So if anyone from Florida State watching this, anyone from, I don't know who would it be, I guess the Florida State media people, the SIDs, I guess, if you're watching this, let me come over there and see what's going on, right? Probably not. I'm not technically a journalist, but I do have a degree in it. So if, whatever that's worth. But anyway, so teams I'm excited to watch this season, teams I'll be, interested to see. So first up here, as you see, there's not many SEC teams, so don't call me SEC biased. First up here, Oklahoma State. Basically imported all of North Texas's roster last year, right? Now, new quarterback, running back, wide receivers, head coach, Eric Morris being there. Fascinating to watch. The schedule, though, as well, is somewhat workable because it is the Big 12, and it is what, as people call it, America's College Football Conference. I think Oklahoma State is going to be a learning curve for sure. It's not going to be an easy import. I don't think anything's really easy in college football these days, especially when you're importing a team. Because again, you are leveling up from a G5 to a borderline G5 conference, but still tougher competition. Right? You have your Texas Techs of the world, your Utahs, your Kansas States, your Houstons of the world. So it's not like easy, but there is it's not like you're going from. These players aren't going from the G5 to like the SEC or the Big Ten, where it's just the difficulties ratcheted up, right? So Oklahoma State clearly a team that I'll be interested to watch. Michigan, Kyle Whittingham there. You have Bryce Underwood. You have a whole new offense there being installed. And look, if anything, if last year with Kyle Whittingham and with Devin Pierre and they're running that same style of offense and how good that was at times last year, if that's the quality you're going to get in Michigan with better athletes, and granted the wide receiver room isn't perfect, but is what it is. And I think the current personnel fits enough to where what they're going to run this year, it's not like overly bad, but or at least it's not going to look like overly bad. Like it's not going to be like it was last year, right? With Chip Lindsey and Sharon Moore and whatnot. So I do think you will see an upgrade there. That's a team I'm very fascinated to watch. Miami, just talked about them the other day. Darian Mensah, all the transfers coming in. You have returning starters as well. That's a team I'm also very excited to watch, especially the offense too. I think the offense may even be several layers better than what it was last year with Carson Beck. Nothing wrong with Carson Beck. He was serviceable, did a whole lot, got to the national title. But I think of Darian Mensah is going to be, and I've seen a lot of folks talk about this, and this didn't really fully register with me initially, but it is interesting to really think about that their offense could be, again, a lot better than it was last year. I think of Mensah, sort of what I've been hearing, or at least the vibes and whatnot, is he's definitely a mixture of what you got last year with Carson Beck, the experience, and him, starting a lot of games, going back to Tulane and at Duke. Then you also have people also saying that in terms of his skill set, very similar to Cam Ward. He's a dual threat guy, can run around, he can obviously throw the ball pretty well. So that's team, especially on the offense. Now defensively, we'll see. Again, we touched on this on Tuesday. They could step back. I still like the defensive staff here. I still like a lot of the players there. So that's a team that I'm excited to watch, especially for the offense. I think that one's gonna be a lot of fun to watch. Florida, talked about it. You bring up Buster Faulkner. Of course, John Summerall is a new coach there. That's much like Miami, the offense I'm interested in watching. Because again, Florida, in terms of the last few years, ever since, I guess, Dan Mullen's final year there in Gainesville, haven't had consistency on the offense at all, especially under Billy Napier, right? It was just kind of got a lot of mush and just gross to watch. I don't think you're getting that with Buster Faulkner. I think you are going to get a massive upgrade there. Talent's still there. You still have Dallas Wilson, still have Jaden Ball, Aaron Philo, starting quarterback more than likely. Not much of a runner, but I don't think that's a big deal per se. Haynes King, dual threat guy, but was he, I don't know, was he like a guy that you would count for rushing for 1,000 yards? I mean, probably not. But anyway, some questions there how that'll fit. But as long as you have Jaden Ball at running back, as long as he's healthy, that offensive line there is healthy, that that combination there can be very dangerous for opposing defenses. So even without the pure running quarterback threat there, I think they should be fine. Penn State, much like Oklahoma State, just fascinating in general, the entire team, right? Matt Campbell coming in. Yes, the schedule's manageable, but again, like folks for some reason have been saying lately, the whole, let's hit the brakes a little bit. I think Penn State, again, you should still feel pretty good about them, right? I mean, I mentioned on the Tuesday show, just because a lot of our folks are, hitting the brakes and saying, "Oh, not just a minute, whoa, let's not hype them up too much." Why not? If you're a Penn State fan, you should be excited, right? And even though I'm not a Penn State fan, I'm still excited, even though a lot of folks are telling us to pump the brakes. This is still a good team, and there's an opportunity there to be had with the talent you're bringing in. Yes, you are going from the Big 12 to the Big 10. That is a jump. Do I think it will be necessarily perfect to begin with? No. And go back to Matt Campbell's time at Iowa State. There were several times that they struggled with Northern Iowa or some of the local FCS teams, they'll struggle with those teams. All those games are very low scoring. I expect more than likely that you're going to get the same thing. It's going to be an adjustment period, but as you go on through the season, as these guys get more acclimated to facing more consistent Big Ten competition, I don't think it'll be too much of an issue, but we'll see. Again, it's very strange how, again, a lot of folks are all of a sudden hitting the brakes on them in Florida, which is just like kind of insane to me. Again, I get it. It's, well, a team that all, the teams were in their schedule, which is true, but, there are facets of Penn State and Florida that are very, appealing, right? The players are bringing in. Yes, again, it is, especially for Penn State, more or less in Florida. It's definitely, it's going to be a learning curve, right? You're going from one conference that, again, is more or less borderline G5 to a conference that's pumping out draft, high NFL draft picks, right? It's not the same, and I understand that, but that really shouldn't fully deter you from being excited, especially if you're a Penn State fan. So, teams I'm excited for: Oklahoma State, Michigan, Miami, Florida, and Penn State. Those are teams I'm very, very excited to watch, and very, very interested to see how they'll do this year. And I think we've done, all of those teams already for the team record projection series. So, if they haven't seen those yet, I think it's pretty clear. I do have a lot of, let's just say, hope and a lot of excitement for those teams being extremely, very much so. I think they're going to end up giving a lot of folks a lot of, I don't know, what's the right word, I guess. I don't know, what is the word for that? I guess kind of return on investment, I guess, in year one. But anyway, I think that is it's probably a good solid list. I think, and not all the folks will probably disagree with that. But anyway, so let's see here. I'll down the list here. All right, yeah, Washington team record projection series. That were at least the segment continuing. I will say too, I know a lot of you are probably wondering, hey, where's the news about the Buccaneers and what's happening now, since obviously NFL camp has opened this week for everyone now. What's going on with the stuff with Vita Vea and Baker Mayfield and the situation of their contracts. I was going to do that today, but didn't want to have a long show, so we'll save that for either tomorrow's extra pod or just do an individual video, like a breaking news video. We'll probably cover that tomorrow. So just be advised by that we're not covering that per se. Anyway, team record projection series: Washington Huskies. This will be the third year, I believe, for Jetfish and Company. This is interesting stuff for them. So again, they have Damon Williams. He was the quarterback there last year. Of course, those of you who don't remember, he almost transferred, and that was a whole fiasco with it was very, very strange. And I think a lot of folks in that whole situation back in, what was it, December and January when that happened? Very, very odd situation there. So, last year was what it was. I believe they ended up going with 9-4, I believe. They won 9 games total. Yeah, so very solid season for them. Everyone thought, including me, okay, this could be a big year for them. Maybe we're just a year too early, maybe. Their schedule, we'll pull it up. We'll talk about here in a minute. But again, with Jamal Williams being there, huddle dynamic, that's the key in my opinion. Doesn't matter if it's the receiver core, the running back situation there. Of course, they lost a lot of talent there. They brought in some talent in the transfer portal. A lot of it's, more or less unproven, I guess. You do have, who was it? They have Elijah Brown, the quarterback there, backup. They have some other players, too, that are, backup guys from, like, Ohio State. There's a player from Mississippi State as well. So kind of a mixed bag in terms of players you can get there, which is, understandable because, again, it's a Washington, or not really a team that, kind of, they're not like the most appealing program, even though I think they should be. In my opinion, is I think, there's just certain factors there to where they're not really the most appealing team to go to transfer to. They're not like Ohio State, Oregon, Iowa, even USC, obviously, and UCLA. But anyway, you have Jeff Fish back there this year. You also have Ryan Walters being back, as well as the defensive coordinator. And you also have, I believe, change over there on the offensive staff. So Jeff Fish will be calling the plays this year, which is different from last year. They let go the offensive coordinator, who I believe resigned, I believe. So some change over there of the staff a little bit, but mostly the same staff since, from what it was last year. So, minor change there, but we'll see how that works out. But, the dynamic here, I think, with Damon Williams is the key. And the fact that the way things went back in December with him threatening to transfer, and it happened during, what was it, the funeral for the volleyball player, I believe that's who it was. Just weird timing. The vibes there were really off. That's the key for this team. I think this team, based on, again, who they're bringing in, yes, it's not like players you've heard of, per se, in terms of the transfers, that they could be contributors early, and along with some of the talent they still have left. This isn't going to be a bad team. And their schedule, overall, it's workable-ish, but there are some tough teams here. You don't really necessarily avoid the big boys, per se, but the runway here is pretty good. It starts off with Washington. I believe that's a Thursday or Friday game. I'm pretty sure it's Sunday, actually. Sunday game. That's at home, so you should, I think, win that game. You have Utah State. You have your regional FCS team. So you should be 3-0. You get Minnesota at home. So, again, the travel advantage there. I think you should win that game. Then they get thrown in a hurry. You get USC on the road. You'll probably lose that game. Iowa, we'll see. And that's always going to be tough. But, again, it's at home for you guys. So that's good. Purdue on a Friday night on the road. That's not going to be easy. I know a lot of folks will kind of laugh at it, be like, oh, what's Purdue? I mean, they haven't been good for the last few years. That's true. But, again, it's always weird when you have these West Coast teams, West Coast based teams going across the country all the way to basically the East Coast, or not far, or a little bit less than halfway. So that's, travel dynamic there gonna be an issue. And Nebraska's gonna be tough. Very, very interesting home environment there. They always show up, even though the team's not been very good. You host Penn State. That's the big game everyone's circling. Penn State, or at least at home, at least one of the two home games. You have Penn State there for, I believe, homecoming. I believe that's what the schedule says here. Then you go to Michigan State. Again, you're going across, basically halfway across the country. Then you have the other home game, the other big one. Indiana comes to town late in the year. So those are the two games there I think a lot of folks are circling, mainly that Penn State game. Then, of course, you have the rivalry game of Oregon. That's going to be tough, as always, on the road. You were competitive-ish last year, but they ended up pulling away, I think, if I recall. Well, obviously, Oregon won, but I think, was it a close game or not? I don't remember. A lot of things have happened since then. But, yeah, so bit of a sweet and sour, if you will, schedule here. You get, the games that you think you should win, right? The teams you want to play at the very least. Like Michigan State, you want to play. Purdue, you want to play. Minnesota at home, you want to play. Iowa at home, you want to play them. So those are, and along with your non-con, that should be 7 games, I believe, you should be favored in. Then there's games you won't be favored in, right? Your USCs of the world. Your Nebraskas probably. Penn State, Indiana, Oregon. So that's around like 4 or 5. So with that being said, I'm going to pull up the schedule here, and we'll pull up the little graphic we have here. If we can get to pull it up here, make sure it is the right one, because sometimes, if you're new here, we often sometimes pull up the wrong little graphic there. But, it's a mistake that happens to, I think, everyone. I think at some points. But here we go. Here's the records projection here for Washington. So, best case scenario, 8-4. Worst case scenario, 6-6. If indeed things sort of go off the rails here, and that's kind of maybe like the lesser of the worst case scenarios, I think. It just depends on if the whole DeMont Williams thing, if this team is really bought in, which maybe they are, right? Maybe they are fully bought in. Maybe this team can be a lot better. But 6-6 probably is the worst case scenario. That's the bottom falls out. Things do not go over well. DeMont Williams isn't fully brought in, especially later in the year. Most reasonable is still 8-4. Now, I could go higher, but in lieu of not doing what I did last year and getting a little bit too overhyped, I think the best case scenario and most reasonable is the same thing. I think both of them, are, about the same. They're 8-4 in the best case and the most reasonable. I think I would agree with that. I think both of those are more much likely. Could it be better? Could it go 9-3? Could it go 10-2? Could it be a surprise team? All of that's possible. Again, to me, that all really brings down to, is DeMont Williams, is he fully bought in? Because if he is, the rest of the team, yes, they've lost some players, and a lot of talent has gone to the NFL. At least some talent has gone to the NFL, especially in last year's draft. That's true, but I really do think DeMont Williams is a good player. Jed Fish is not a stupid head coach. He's been around for a while. He's been in the NFL and been on other coaching staff. So, Could 8-4? Could the best case scenario be better than that? Sure, but I am, not. It's not like I'm like purposely or like I'm. It's not like I'm like hitting the brakes as in like, oh, I just don't have a lot of faith in them. It's more or less I may have been a little too high on them last year to where let's recalibrate some stuff and maybe hey, maybe we were just last year we were a little too early on them. Who knows? But yeah, for Washington again, best case scenario 8-4, worst case 6-6, most reasonable, the same as the best case 8-4. So, and that's the show. 40-minute show, which is per usual for how it usually goes with us. We don't really go, at least during this time of year, we don't typically go over an hour. But we almost did the other day, but this time we're not. So, and we're also getting in before the storms come in because I believe there might be some storms near us right now. Yeah, there's one over downtown, so probably raining here soon, I guess, here on our part of town here in Jacksonville, which is more towards the ocean, the East Coast. Anyway, we'll be back next week, the same times, more likely as usual, the same days as well, of course. Extra pod tomorrow. We'll go over that. A lot of things to discuss outside of what we talk about here on the main show here. So again, Spotify is where you can get the full shows for that. If you want the full show, go over there. You just want the individual clips instead of the full show, and then just skip it on the YouTube channel over the weekend. Until next week, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Enjoy the last few days of August or of July, and here comes August again. Fall camps are already starting up for some teams who are playing on week 0. So those practice supports will be coming in soon, and of course we'll be covering those ad nauseum. So just again, make sure this is the time we need to subscribe here. This is the time we need to go to any friends who are big college football fans. Tell them to come here. We're not the oldest show. We're definitely one of the newer shows out there. We've only been around for 2 years, but we're still growing, and we need to build that fan base. So build up. Do it for us, and reach out to other folks who are college football fans and have them subscribe. So again, enjoy the rest of your week.